Hey everyone, it is Tuesday, January 14th. You are listening to the Mo News Podcast, and I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts. We read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. As you could tell, it's just me today. Moshe is a bit under the weather, so you know what that means. I will be keeping this short and sweet, but there is a lot of news to get to. I also want to quickly mention, as a follow-up to our Friday segment, what we're watching, reading, and eating, I had promised that I was going to post the apple cake that I was making, and a few people asked how it went. So I actually didn't have enough plain yogurt to follow the recipe properly. I did make it anyway. It was okay, but it really needs the right amount of ingredients. So I'm going to make it this week again correctly, and I will then post about it on my Instagram, Jill R. Wagner. I just didn't think I would do justice to the recipe if I posted the crazy concoction that I put together. Okay, now to the news. Let's start with the Los Angeles wildfires. Officials say the wind picking back up with the potential for, quote, explosive fire growth. Meanwhile, California's Attorney General is warning against price gouging and scams amid the wildfire. And how to talk to your kids about what's happening, especially those whose homes and schools have been destroyed. To politics, Joe Biden's farewell tour continues. On Monday, he gave his final foreign policy speech. Starting today, we have confirmation hearings for Donald Trump's cabinet picks, including his pick for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. That starts this morning. To the Middle East, officials say a hostage-ceasefire deal is close. And I know we have reported this before, and Moshe and I are sometimes hesitant to go with these stories. But this time, even President Biden says that they are on the brink of a deal. One official said it is a question of whether it's hours or days. Back here in the U.S., childhood vaccination rates were falling even before the rise of R.F.K. Jr., what it means for sicknesses like polio that we thought were extinct. And the FDA could soon approve a new pain pill being billed as non-addictive. And millions start bathing in holy rivers at India's biggest Hindu festival, which is described as humanity's biggest gathering, so large it can be seen from space. And as usual, we will end with On This Day in History. Okay, let's start in California. As we reported yesterday, the winds had died down a bit, allowing firefighters to make some real headway on battling the fires. But now the National Weather Service warning of extreme fire danger through Wednesday in LA County as those strong Santa Ana winds return to the area. They put out a red flag warning with a maximum level designation of a, quote, particularly dangerous situation. In their words, this setup is about as bad as it gets. They're telling people to stay aware of their surroundings, avoid anything that could spark a fire, and be prepared to evacuate. The most powerful winds are expected to return this morning. Now, they're not expected to be quite as strong as when that fire first broke out a few days ago, but still we are talking 50 miles per hour in some cases. And help is coming from around the world. Hundreds of firefighters from Mexico and Canada are now in California helping. Even Ukraine, which is dealing with a war against Russia, offering to send firefighters as well. As for residents who are anxious to get back to see what's left of their homes, they are being asked to wait as authorities are still trying to locate victims. LA County Sheriff Robert Luna warning on Monday that more bodies are expected to be discovered as search teams comb through the devastation. At least 24 people are confirmed dead in LA County, and at least 23 adults are still missing.
Please be patient with us. People are saying, I just want to go look at my house and I want to see what's left. We know that, but we have people literally looking for the remains of your neighbors. And
it comes as the Los Angeles Police Department has halted an escort service that was designed to assist residents in retrieving essential items from their homes. An LAPD official said Monday that it was causing more problems than solutions. Homeowners in LA are also facing predatory landlords that have been trying to make extra money in the face of the crisis. The county's top prosecutor, Nathan Hochman, says price gouging amid the devastating wildfires is already happening.
We have been seeing price gouging with hotels, people offering residences well above the 10% addition that they can charge. We've seen that with medical supplies, other types of supplies.
Officials are also warning people about government benefit scams and fraudulent charity funds, which is a good reminder to verify the organization that you donate to. so you can make sure that your help is getting to the people who actually need it. Meanwhile, some homeowners and renters who lost their homes have filed at least 4 separate lawsuits Monday against Southern California Edison. That's the utility company in California. The 4 lawsuits each allege that the company failed to de-energize all of its electrical equipment despite red flag warnings that were issued by the National Weather Service. On Monday, the CEO of the parent company of SCE said that investigations are underway to determine if any of their equipment contributed to either the Eaton or the Hearst fires. And then there are all the kids that are caught in the middle of this. The Los Angeles Unified and other local school districts returned to class on Monday. Schools began closing on Tuesday and Wednesday of last week, which left up to 700,000 students home from school as the fires spread. LA Unified is the second largest school district in the country. It accounts for nearly half of those students. Over the weekend, 1,000 schools in the district went through air quality inspections and HVAC filter replacements to make sure that the students were safe to return. The bad news, many schools were destroyed in the fire, which means it could be a while before those kids are back in the classrooms. In the Pacific Palisades neighborhood, 2 elementary schools burned and 1 high school was badly damaged. 5 campuses in Altadena were also reportedly damaged, while other districts are still assessing the destruction. And many of those kids have also been uprooted from their homes. Some lost everything as their houses went up in flames. At least 340 district staff so far have also lost their homes. Here is a report from CNN as those fires first broke out. I think I mentioned it. Moshe and I talked a bit about this report last week.
There is no power across this area for a lot of the immediate close regions. So it's almost as if you're living in suspended reality. And the kids are crying out of control. I don't really know how else to explain it.
In an essay in the Free Press, a mother told one of their journalists about evacuating with her 2 daughters. She said she told them to grab their stuff. And when she opened her 7-year-old's backpack, it was 100% stuffed animals, no underwear, all stuffies is how she put it, which is just heartbreaking. So if you are living in Los Angeles and have young kids, psychologists recommend being open and honest with them, giving concrete facts without graphic details. And they say that parents with babies should also recognize that they are probably aware that something is different in their surroundings and might act differently. So it's best to keep any semblance of a routine if possible. We'll be keeping up to date with all of the developments through the week on the Mo News Instagram account and also here on the podcast. Turning to politics, President Biden's farewell tour continues tomorrow. He's set to give a primetime farewell address to the nation just days before his 1 term in office officially ends and President-elect Trump moves back into the White House. Biden will be addressing the country from the Oval Office at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday. On Monday, Biden delivered remarks at the State Department reflecting on his administration's foreign policy legacy. He took office amid the worst global pandemic in a century, only to face a series of complex international crises. He looked to frame his presidency as one that has left the country stronger and better positioned than when he took office 4 years ago.
Thanks to our administration, the United States is winning the worldwide competition. Compared to 4 years ago, America is stronger. Our alliances are stronger. Our adversaries and competitors are weaker.
One of his major foreign policy decisions and perhaps a turning point of his presidency in terms of when his approval rating took a dive was the chaotic U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021. After Biden fulfilled his campaign promise to end America's longest war, the U.S.-backed Afghan government collapsed. A suicide bombing killed 13 U.S. troops and 170 Afghan civilians. And thousands of Afghans desperately crowded Kabul's airport, attempting to escape before the final U.S. aircraft left. I still remember watching those images, which seemed unbelievable at the time. Fast forward, the Taliban is now back in control of Afghanistan. And it feels like almost every day we're learning about another right of women's that they're taking away. But on Monday, Biden said that the decision was the right one.
In my view, it was time to end the war and bring our troops home, and we did. I commend the courage of all those who served in Afghanistan. We grieve all 2,461 Americans who made the ultimate sacrifice in the longest war in American history. And I grieve those brave service members whose lives were lost during the withdrawal. We also thank those inside and outside of government have done so much to help thousands of Afghan families resettle in the United States.
He argued that staying in Afghanistan would have played into the hands of U.S. adversaries, including China and Russia. And he also dismissed warnings that the withdrawal would weaken U.S. alliances or create new terrorism threats from Afghanistan. Biden also talked about the war between Israel and Hamas, and he said that they were, quote, on the brink of a hostage and ceasefire deal. And I'll have more on that coming up. Let's start with politics from Punchbowl News. President-elect Trump will be inaugurated in less than a week. And inside the Capitol, the blitz of Senate confirmation hearings kicks off today for Trump's cabinet nominees. 13 nominees will appear before 11 different Senate committees this week. The majority of these will have a relatively smooth confirmation process. And some of Trump's more controversial nominees haven't had their hearings scheduled yet. The main events will be Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing before the Senate Armed Services Committee this morning. Hegseth is Trump's nominee for defense secretary. He's faced allegations of sexual and financial misconduct, as well as some doubts about his qualifications for the role. Senators Roger Wicker, Republican from Mississippi, and Jack Reed, a Democrat from Rhode Island, the chair and the ranking member, respectively, are the only committee members who have viewed Hegseth's FBI file, which was delivered to the panel late last week. Republicans who have been briefed say that the report is unremarkable. Senate Republicans want Trump's national security nominees to be confirmed on day one or close to it. But Democrats are determined to expose what they see as an unfit nominee in Hegseth. It's virtually guaranteed that Democrats will not agree to fast-track Hegseth's nomination on the floor, even if it's clear he'll have enough votes to be confirmed. Another nominee whose hearing could potentially get testy is Pam Bondi, Trump's pick for Attorney General. She'll be sitting before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Wednesday and Thursday. She's going to be facing questions about her independence from Trump, given her previous representation of the incoming president during his first impeachment trial. Then there's Senator Marco Rubio, Republican from Florida, nominated for Secretary of State. He is the most likely to be approved on Inauguration Day. His hearing is scheduled for Wednesday, and again, we expect he'll be confirmed easily. In addition to Hegseth, two other national security nominees could face a difficult path to Senate confirmation. One of them is former Representative Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii. She is nominated for the DNI post. And then Kash Patel, Trump's pick for FBI director. He likely won't have his confirmation hearing, though, until February. Okay, now to the war between Israel and Hamas. From CNN, American officials believe a ceasefire and hostage release deal between Israel and Hamas could happen within the week before Trump takes office. It is the first real sign of hope for a deal in months, although officials are remaining cautiously optimistic, given how many times these negotiations have fallen through. A diplomat close to the negotiations tells CNN a final round of proximity talks were scheduled to take place in Doha today to finalize any remaining issues. Hamas telling CNN both parties are working through their final drafts and reporting those back to the mediating parties in Doha, and that includes Qatar, Egypt, and the United States. The agreement includes a first phase of the ceasefire that would see the release of 33 hostages from Gaza in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. There are still nearly 100 hostages in Gaza, and Hamas has refused Israel's request to give a list, including which hostages are still alive. Hamas also appears to have agreed to let Israel maintain a buffer zone in Gaza during the implementation of the ceasefire and allowing the Israeli military to remain in the territory until all of the hostages have been released. Israel will allow displaced Palestinians in southern Gaza to return to the north under security. According to reports, under the latest proposals, Israeli forces would maintain a presence along the Philadelphia corridor. That's that narrow strip of land along the Egypt-Gaza border. So Israeli troops would be able to stay there during the first phase of the agreement. Again, this is all according to reports. If you remember, the presence of Israeli troops in that area previously contributed to sinking a potential deal in September during the last round of negotiations. Another big sticking point, Hamas wants Israel to commit to a permanent ceasefire, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said he wants to resume efforts to eradicate Hamas after the hostages are home safely. Palestinian prisoners deemed responsible for killing Israelis would not be released into the West Bank, according to officials, but instead to the Gaza Strip or abroad following agreements with foreign countries. And officials say Israel is prepared to quickly implement the agreement, but the deal must first pass both the Security Cabinet and the full government cabinet. And the government must also allow time for opponents of the agreement to petition the Supreme Court. So you might be wondering who might potentially oppose a deal. perhaps someone who had a family member who was killed by one of the Palestinian prisoners being released. Now, in the past, the Supreme Court has ruled very quickly on such cases. Negotiations to reach a second phase of a ceasefire agreement, which is intended to end the war, would start on the 16th day of the implementation of the deal. This war has been going on for more than 15 months. Okay, back here at home from the New York Times, kids are getting vaccinated at much lower rates than before the pandemic, which is alarming medical experts concerned about herd immunity for once common childhood diseases that have largely been eradicated from vaccines. So last year, less than 93% of kindergartners nationwide got the measles vaccine. That's down from more than 95% during the 2019-2020 school year, according to the CDC. The same went for vaccinations for polio, whooping cough, and chickenpox. Some states saw even more dramatic dips, with Idaho's vaccination rates dropping nearly 10 percentage points since before the pandemic to below 80% immunization among kindergarteners for the last school year. In a recent Gallup poll, only 40% of Americans consider childhood vaccines extremely important, down from 58% in 2019 and 64% in 2001. The poll notes that the decline is largely attributed to Republican voters, where only 26% say that vaccines are extremely important. So it's important to note that these state governments are the ones that set vaccine mandates, not the federal government. But there is some concern that the incoming Trump administration could seek to undermine vaccine mandates or encourage anti-vax sentiments, especially with Trump's pick for health secretary being Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has spread misinformation about vaccines causing autism in the past. Yesterday, a group of 700 health professionals and scientists signed a public letter urging senators to reject R.F.K's nomination. They say because of his fringe beliefs that could undermine public health practices across the country. R.F.K's confirmation hearing date has not been set, but he is facing some pushback on both sides of the aisle. From the Washington Post, the FDA could soon approve a new pain medication that does not pose a risk for addiction. The pill is made by Vertex Pharmaceuticals. It is called suzetrigine, and it treats relatively short-term pain. Clinical trials showed that it helped in people recovering from 2 types of surgeries. The company is still doing studies on whether it can treat chronic, longer-term pain. Vertex estimates about 80 million adults in the U.S. are prescribed pain management medication for short-term issues every year. They haven't released a price tag for the drugs, but the expectation is that they will be more costly than generic opioids, though the major advantage here is that the studies have shown that these drugs are non-addictive. The U.S. recorded more than 107,000 overdose deaths in 2023. 75% of those are from opioids. The application for Vertex's non-opioid painkiller could be approved by the end of January. And finally, from the BBC, millions of people have taken a holy bath at the Hindu festival of Kumbh Mela in northern India on Monday. The event is described as humanity's biggest gathering. It's held once every 12 years. It started on Monday and it takes place over the next 6 weeks. The devout will bathe in part of India's most sacred Ganges River. Hindus believe that taking a dip in the sacred river will cleanse them of sins, purify their soul, and liberate them from the cycle of birth and death, as the ultimate goal of Hinduism is salvation. About 400 million pilgrims are expected to attend the 45-day spectacle, which is so large it can be seen from space. Authorities said that on Monday until 4 p.m. local time, about 16 million people had taken a bath. And today, those numbers are expected to exceed 20 million. All right, now time for On This Day in History. On January 14th, 1952, NBC's Today Show premiered with Dave Garroway as the original host. Craig Melvin took over yesterday as co-host after Hoda Kotb's departure on Friday. On this day in 2004, Burger King jumped on the low-carb craze, introducing a Whopper without the bun. Funnily enough, when I go to fast food, I do the opposite. I get a burger or a cheeseburger without the meat. I usually add cheese. So a cheeseburger without the meat, it's kind of like a grilled cheese, but with all of the delicious onions but with the onions and the pickle and everything else that they add. On this day in 2013, cyclist Lance Armstrong ended years of denial by confessing to Oprah Winfrey in a televised interview that he had used performance-enhancing drugs to win the Tour de France 7 consecutive times. On this day in 1954, baseball legend Joe DiMaggio and actress Marilyn Monroe married at San Francisco City Hall. Their brief but tumultuous marriage lasted just 9 months. And on this day in 1970, Diana Ross and the Supremes performed their final concert together at the Frontier Hotel in Las Vegas before Ross embarked on a solo career. Okay, that does it for my solo podcast today. Thank you for listening to the Mo News Podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Review us in the App Store. We would appreciate it. Thank you for listening, Moshe. If you are listening, I hope you feel better, and I hope you are back tomorrow. Have a great day, everyone.